Okay.
Nick, you ready?
Yep.
Okay. All right. I'm Chris Newfer. I'm the chair of the Virginia Caregiver Coalition. Thank you very much for coming to our session today. We've got a great program coming up for you that Donna Cantrell, our education committee director, will introduce, and some news items from Nick. But just a few words before we get going. We had 5 new members join us in February, and I don't see them on the call today, but I just want to point out that all 5 of them are personal caregivers. And this is a big shift, and it's really the right direction for the coalition, because when the coalition started, it was basically a getting together of various agencies that served caregivers around the state. But what we wanted to do is try to move our membership base off of that solid foundation and begin to bring in more and more people who are on the front lines, who are actual family caregivers that are doing that wonderful work. So I just want to point out that this is a great trend in our membership recruitment efforts, and we hope it'll continue. And we encourage all of you who are in various community organizations to reach out to your stakeholders and your clients and encourage them to join us, and so that we can broaden our base and begin to really try to make an impact to benefit the caregiving community in our state. So with that said, I'd just like to bring up one item of news. Insight Memory Care has classes for caregivers. They have a regular ongoing program, and their program for April, coming up April 14th, will be you can't do this alone, building a care team, and that'll be on Wednesday, April 14th from 1 to 3. And if you'd like to register, visit insightmcc.org/events. And while you're there, you will also see the other offerings they have monthly there. They did a wonderful presentation for us a few months back, and they're a terrific group and really a wonderful part of the community. So,
hey, Chris,
yes.
I don't know if he appears to have her hand up.
Yes, I was just going to say, if we have any announcements of interest from the attendees, I would like to have them now. And Dee, you're on it.
Thank you. In response to the new members, we talked about this before, but I forgot what the upshot was regarding a membership list, so that we know who the members are, that if they need us or we would like some input from them. I forgot what we said about that.
Okay. I think there were some issues, and I think it came up in membership committee. Unfortunately, it got moved down the list because we had other issues to take care of. But I think there was some sense of privacy, perhaps, publishing that list, especially among the people that are caregivers. But again, let's revisit it and see how we feel. Maybe there's a way to get permission for people to, join the roster. We'd make it a roster that people could sign up for. So we'll definitely pick that up and have some information for you next general meeting.
Can I just chime in here?
Yes, good.
I manage the list, and I do have a master list, but our membership application does not have anywhere on it that asks if they want their information shared, with others. I think that's something I could send out either a mass email, and the people who want that shared can get back to me, and I can move them to a new list that could become public or something that we could share amongst ourselves. I definitely think it's doable. I just have to be able to, have a moment where I can sort through 100 emails. But definitely,
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I think
Is
that's
that something we should just go ahead and add to the application now that, your name, this will be a public list. If you want it to stay private, check here or something?
yeah, I think we could.
Okay.
I'll put lives on it.
All right. Well, that was swift and to the point, and that's exactly where we got hung up last time. But that was the question. Let's see, Kathy, any thoughts on that on publishing membership roster?
As long as people give their permission, there is no problem with it.
Okay, good. From on high, we get the word. Okay. Anybody else have any items of interest from your community or from your organization that you'd like to share?
We have two really good virtual options coming up for caregivers. We have our Powerful Tools for Caregivers class that will start April 1st. And I think it's like $15, but we can always waive the fee if the caregiver is financially burdened. And then we also have a really great kind of interesting workshop coming up in April called Moving Through Caregiver Burnout. And it's actually a good friend of mine who's studying at Drexel University dance therapy. So she's going to do movement interventions for caregivers, both professional and family caregivers for that one. So I'll put in the chat our website you can look up, and all the registration details are on there as well. So
Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah.
Dee, anything at Senior Connections?
I did want to share that there is a way of obtaining broadband now that has come out, and it's folks who are eligible are those who are eligible for SNAP or the Lifeline phone network. I can put that information in the chat as well.
Okay, thanks. Connie, anything from AARP? I guess.
Sorry, needed to get off mute. No, we don't have anything yet. We did talk a little bit last time about potentially this group looking at the AARP scorecard for the year. Of course, we're getting into the year and you might have decided that was not a direction you wanted to go. I had offered up someone from AARP to come and discuss the scorecard to this group if you would like for them to. It would be somebody from the national group, and it would take 3 or 4 months to get them scheduled, and then we're even further into the year.
Okay, well, Connie, thanks for that. I believe we have that on our program agenda. We're going to discuss it. George and Christy Jensen are going to do a program on that, I believe in May.
Okay.
Is that correct, George?
Yeah. Yes.
All right. But thanks for that input. I appreciate it.
Okay.
George, anything from your end? Dementia services.
No, I don't think so. But
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Sharon, anything going on there in Fishersville?
Hey, well, we're trying to get everything done so that we can start going back into facilities, which we haven't at this point. But I did want to let you guys know that the group that that I also work with, called the Greater Augusta Coalition Against Adult Abuse. We do a big program every year. Typically, it's at Blue Ridge Community College. This year, it'll be virtual. And if you go on the website, it is scheduled for May the 4th. And there's where they're going to do some stuff in terms of financial abuse and other things, but there's also a gentleman who's going to talk about determining capacity and for, and particularly, for caregivers trying to figure out what's going on, and for other entities as to whether someone has the capacity to be able. It's free. And you can just register. As far as I know, the information is there, and I think registration has started, but it's GACAAA.com. And if you go on the website, then you'll be able to have the conference, and it'll be listed for May the 4th. And I know we're also working on some things for World Elder Abuse Day on June 15th.
All right, thank you, Sharon. I see that Valen Saunders is with us. Valen's a new member, and as we like to do with all our new members at their first meeting, we'd like to invite her to tell us a little bit about herself.
Hello, hi, my name is Valen Saunders. I have a mom who's 75 years old, and right now she lives by herself in an apartment, and I basically wanted to get involved in volunteering to see where I could help. I'm not sure wherever you would need me. I work right now for a Department of Defense, and I have administrative skills, typing skills, a vast amount of managerial skills. That I hope to be able to, help wherever I can.
Well, thank you, Valen. That's good. We appreciate that, and I think we will probably try to get you. I think you mentioned that you were interested in the membership piece, membership committee, and the advocacy committee. So we're developing our strategies for that as the year goes on, but definitely thanks for your participation. Nick, any updates from you?
Yes, I do. I have a couple. Sorry, let me switch over. Okay. So like Kathy had said before we started the recording, the VCC guide is in its final edits. Hopefully we'll be able to get them finalized so we can move to printing within the next month or so. The grant that was supposed to drop in January still hasn't dropped yet. However, Emily Hoyt has reached out and talked to the ACL person in charge of it, and she said that it will be coming soon. So whatever that means, but we're hoping before the end of the month would be awesome. And that is for the continuation of the Virginia Lifespan Respite Voucher Program that DARS does. I also recently gave a presentation about the VCC to the Chesterfield County Council on Aging Caregiver Committee, and we had a familiar face as Dee was there. I got some really good feedback in regards to the VCC and creating a newsletter and just trying to get educational information out and dispersed. And I took a lot of notes from what they had to say. And I was also invited to give the same presentation for Crater Community Hospice in the next month or two. So that's exciting. I normally don't get to be in the spotlight, so I guess it's fun. But George left a very good impression, apparently. So, because he had worked with them before. And then the only other thing I'd like to share is there was a report on family caregiver priorities and recommendations that was published February 16th in partnership between the John Hartford Foundation, NASHP, and the ACL. And I just have a couple highlights that I kind of briefly highlighted over my third cup of coffee this morning. So just from the executive summary, data informing this report was collected from responses to a request for information from the ACL as it works to implement the requirements of the RAISE Family Caregiver Act of 2017. So the responses reflected the diversity of family caregivers who cared for many different types of care recipients and were from a range of socioeconomic circumstances living across the nation in cities, suburbs, and rural areas. The challenges they face are accordingly diverse, although certain themes dominated, most notably the financial stress caused by caregiving and the need for services and supports targeted at family caregivers. Respondents specifically requested services and supports, requested compensation to alleviate the financial pressures created by their caregiving responsibilities, as well as greater investment in workplace accommodations to enable them to maintain employment. Similarly, there was demand for specific types of services to make the job of caregiving less difficult. The request for respite was the most pronounced, but respondents also said they needed information and advice as well as training for the more complicated tasks associated with providing care. Lastly, respondents linked the poor quality of the paid workforce to low pay and lack of training, emphasizing how this poor quality makes it harder to feel comfortable relying on these services even where they are available and affordable. This leads to additional stress on family caregivers. So they had written in the report that their participation was robust. They had 1,613 unique responses, which was about double the participation they were expecting. 75% of the respondents were family caregivers, while advocacy and community-based organizations comprised 11% and 10% of responses, respectively. Overall, respondents prioritized issues around service planning and or delivery were cited as the top priorities, with person-centered care coming second and care transitions / coordination coming fourth, and respite came in third as their biggest priorities. So prominent among the themes found in the responses and recommendations were concerns about caregivers' personal finances and future financial security, which caused caregivers significant stress and worry. Even when care recipients had access to supportive services, it was frequently noted that such services were not compatible with full-time employment. Caregivers also commented that workplaces were not accommodating of caregiver needs, such as the need to accompany care recipients to medical appointments during the working day or to take unplanned time off to respond to emergencies. Lack of access to services and worries about service quality functions as further barriers to employment for family caregivers. One other thing I just want to note was the single most prevalent recommendation raised in the open-ended responses was the need to compensate family caregivers, and that grandparents looking after grandchildren specifically noted that foster parents receive compensation for which they as relatives are not eligible for. And they responded specifically referred to the need to expand the Family and Medical Leave Act. So I found that was pretty interesting. The report is only about 13 pages long, single-sided. And I will link to it if anyone wants to read it. But a lot of what the report found has honestly been in line with the people I've talked to through the Lifespan Respite Voucher Program. I had someone call yesterday in regards to caring for their young child with autism and the difficulties they've been having trying to not only adjust to online learning and the difficulties with getting their child to stay in front of a screen, but also her need to return to work full time, and that issues with the managed care organization not covering certain services that were being provided in the home. Well, now they said, well, you can, take them somewhere. Well, there's like a 2-year waiting list for everyone in the neighborhood. And she, expressed that it's hard to return to work full time when she can't find supports in her area. And that a lot of the daycare organizations either were not capable of meeting her child's needs or weren't able to because of current minimum staffing requirements, because her child needs really one-on-one care. So I talked to her for about 20 minutes while she was expressing her concerns and thoughts. So it kind of goes in line, and I'm sure, a lot of you guys are hearing that as well. And, caregivers are experiencing a lot of the same issues. So. That's what I have on my end. If anyone has any thoughts.
I can tell you, this is Sharon, that there is some discussion. And it truly is just discussion about the need for more specialized daycare centers. In terms of specializing and working with kids or having kids there that need more one-on-one, that have some medical issues and some things, but it truly is just in the initial stages, because the question becomes, is the cost going to be prohibitive? And it doesn't fall within any of the waivers or any of those kinds of things. So I'm not sure where it's going to go, but I do know that it's out there. There are some folks in the legislature who are looking at it to try to kind of figure out how they need to approach that. And the other piece that comes up when you were talking about respite services, one of the big things for family caregivers, especially working with folks who have some form of Alzheimer, some form of dementia or Alzheimer's, is years ago, there used to be a nighttime respite service where we have day programs. There was basically a night program. And there's a lot of questions about, is that a possibility again? Because one of the big reasons we see people having to have their individual move into some form of placement is they're exhausted because they can't sleep at night. And if they had a place that they could take their family member to that would be overnight, which works better than trying to have somebody come into the home overnight, is that they might be able to head off, at least buy them some time, potentially, to be able to keep their family member at home longer, or keep them at home on a full-time basis.
Thanks, Sharon. Want to go back to George. He mentioned he had something to share.
Sorry, yes, slipped my mind. So for you new members, welcome. I'm George Worthington. I'm the Dementia Services Coordinator here at DARS. And I wanted to let everybody know that the Alzheimer's Commission has been working on a publication called the Dementia Roadmap, which is a guide for families impacted by dementia. And we are currently looking for stakeholders, so that's all of you as caregivers and professionals working in the field, to review it and provide feedback. So if anybody is interested in reviewing this document, I would be very happy to share it with you. I'll put my email in the chat, so just shoot me an email if you'd like to be part of that. We would like, so I'll be sending that out in the next couple of weeks, and we would ask you to have your feedback back to me by the end of April. So that gives you a few weeks to read it. It's a fairly hefty document. It goes stage by stage, giving people information about what to expect at those different stages of the disease process, and also providing very concrete action steps that are suggested to be taken at each stage. So I'd love it if you were willing to have a look at that and give me feedback. So please send me an email. I'll put my email in the chat now. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, George. Okay, I'd like for our
Chris,
yes.
Chris,
Yes.
hi, it's Kathy. Could I
Hey.
add one thing?
Sure.
I just, the American Rescue Plan that was just passed by Congress and signed by President Biden includes in it $145 million for the National Family Caregiver Support Program. That is part of our Title IIIe funding under the Older Americans Act.
Mm-hmm.
So at this point, we don't know exactly how much Virginia will be receiving of that pot, but I think it might be a very significant amount. So we're just waiting. I'm hoping that they'll get the funding out soon, and by our next meeting, I should actually know how much Virginia's going to get. But that's money that the area agencies on aging will be able to use to provide caregiver services.
Fantastic. Great news. Thank you.
Can I add something? This is Kim Lett.
Hi, Kim.
Hi, I'm new to your group, but actually I'm just filling in for Amitri Bean in the Culpeper area. Amitri is working with the Centers for Independent Living, and I'm not sure how familiar you all are with those, but is working with them to find out about starting a Center for Independent Living in Planning District 9, which is the Culpeper, Madison, Orange, Rappahannock area. She had an initial advisory meeting this month. Another one will be in May, I believe May the 11th. I can forward you her contact information. It is for anybody that is interested. Individuals with disabilities, their family members, any community members that are interested. But ASIL does provide services to people of all ages, independent living services, peer mentoring, advocacy is a big one, and a variety of other different things. So if anybody is interested in finding out more about creating a SIL in Planning District 9, Culpeper, Madison area, I can send the information and make sure you have that. Or if you know Amitri, you can contact her.
Thanks, Kim. If you want to put your email in the chat so that
Okay.
people can copy that and reach back to you.
Will
That
do.
would
Thank
be
you.
great. All right. Anybody else? Okay. I'm going to turn it over to Donna Cantrell, our amazing Education Committee Director, who will introduce Allison, our speaker for today.
Hi, everybody. So considering some of the conversations that have just gone around here and Nick talking about grandparents and grandchildren and fosters being paid and all that, I think this presentation probably is kind of timely. We're going to be hearing from Allison Gilbreth. She's the Policy and Program Director from Voices for Virginia's Children, and she's going to be giving us a legislative update on kinship care in Virginia and talk a little bit about kinship care in general. So Allison, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you now. Thank you so much for your willingness to be here.
Thanks, Donna, and good morning to everyone. I'm going to share my screen for my presentation first, and if someone can just give me a thumbs up to make sure you can see my screen, thank you. Like Donna said, my name is Allison Gilbreth. I'm the Policy and Program Director at Voices for Virginia's Children. We are a multi-issue child advocacy organization. We are statewide in scope, but we are located in Richmond. Like many other organizations, we are mostly remote right now. So I'm in my home in Chesterfield. I think lots of you live in Chesterfield as well. So hello, neighbors. Today, I'm going to be going over our scope of work that we do for around kinship care. And that word can mean a lot of things. And so for this group specifically, I want to make sure that you all know I'm focused on kids really, and for caregivers who are raising their relative children, or kin can also mean fictive kin. So you might have a caregiver who is raising a child that is like a relative, but they are not biologically linked. And I'll talk about why that matters, because we changed some laws this year to legally recognize that standing. So feel free to pause me and unmute yourself if you have a question in the while I'm doing the presentation. It's not that long, so that'll work fine to interrupt me, or if it's easier for you, you're also welcome to use the chat function. I'm going to. Quickly, I just wanted to go over child welfare and the impact that COVID has had on the child welfare system as a whole, and especially on kinship care. So this is a picture of Shauna Lynch. She's a child welfare frontline worker in Chesterfield County, and pretty much nothing stopped when COVID occurred for the child welfare system. There were still kids who had need. There were still kinship caregivers who actually had greater need now, because many of them were reliant on our public school systems for childcare, or they were reliant on another childcare system that closed. So we actually saw even greater need economically for kinship caregivers and caregivers as a whole. So I just wanted to point that out. We did see a decrease in the number of reports to Child Protective Services, but we know that a lot of kin have had to step up in the caregiver role who hadn't had to before, so that their adult children could continue working, things like that. So I want to start here with, this is called the Family First Prevention Services Act. This was actually a federal law that passed in 2018, but is just going to be starting to be implemented in Virginia in July of 2021. So we've been waiting a long time to get this program started. Basically, what the concept of the Family First Prevention Services Act is, right now in almost every state, typically in order to access services when you're a kinship caregiver or a family in general, the child has to be removed from your home. This is changing the way we're going to be providing services in Virginia, so that it's to prevent the entry of a child entering into their home. So let's say you're working with a caregiver who is now about to, who thinks they want to, or maybe taking a child into their home, but they don't necessarily want to go the foster care route. This could be something that they could access. These are just some of the examples of things that Family First switches on. A lot of kids and their families need therapeutic services. So you could do family functional therapy, multi-systematic therapy, parent-child interaction therapy, an array of mental health services for the child and that kinship caregiver to help with the transition for that child. In addition to these things, the family we can also pay for kinship navigator programs. You all probably have like caregiver navigator programs out there. In Virginia, we don't have as many specific kinship caregiver navigators, but with the implementation of this starting in July 2021, localities are looking to scale these services up. So that's something to be looking out for on the horizon as we move towards implementing this through Virginia, is to have more kinship care providers in the Commonwealth. So the other update that's really important, I think one of the number one request from kinship caregivers is cash assistance. We can put in a lot of services are definitely important, but at the bottom line, when we've done evaluations and research, cash has always been the number one need. So as of November of 2020, kinship families who are raising kin relatives outside of the foster care system, but I want to make sure I'm clear, the child, in order to receive this, the child basically would have had to enter foster care, but the kinship caregiver said, no, I'll take them instead. But it's a large group. It's a lot of families that experience that, where they kind of get the call from DSS, and DSS says, will you take them? And they do informally, but there's no case management or anything like that. So as of November 2020, families can access what's called child-only TANF. That means the TANF, Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, is based on the child's income. Child's income is pretty much always going to be zero unless you're dealing with a movie star child, which many of us aren't. And then you're going to be eligible for that TANF amount. I don't have that TANF amount on this slide because it depends on the locality that you live in. It's a little bit different. If you live in a more expensive locality like Fairfax, the amount will be a little bit more. If you live in a rural locality like Suffolk, Virginia, it'll be a little bit less. But if you, as of November 2020, we added to TANF an extra $200 per child in this TANF program. So essentially, if you were a kinship caregiver and you had 2 kids that were in your home, you would be receiving about $726 a month through TANF for kinship families specifically. This is up from about $350 that it used to be before November of 2020. Now, here is the thing that really irritates everyone, is that this is for new families. However, if you had become a kinship family before July of 2020, or from July 2020 on, you are eligible for this amount. And as folks, many of you are on the professional end and not necessarily direct kinship caregivers, this is something that you can tell families who are coming into this situation that this amount is available. One of the reasons we know that kinship families sometimes say, no, I cannot take this child, I'm so sorry that they're going to have to go into foster care, is because of this. It's because they cannot financially afford to take them in. So you can tell them, because anytime something's brand new to a local Department of Social Services, sometimes folks just don't know that this is eligible for families just yet. So you can be a frontliner and let them know that if you do this route, you would be eligible for these dollars. And also, once they're in this TANF cash assistance bucket, they're also going to be able to access SNAP benefits, which is food, and they're also going to be able to access child care assistance, which, depending on the locality that they live in, can sometimes cover the full allotment for child care for the children that are in their home. So I'm going to stop there on the cash assistance. And oh, I think I see, I'm not sure if there's a question in the chat or not. Oh no, that's just something else. Okay. And these are, I want to go over 2 bills that passed in the legislative session, this 2021 legislative session, that will impact kinship caregivers. The first one is House Bill 1962. This is called the Kin First, or what we are calling it, the Kin First legislation by Delegate Wendy Goditis. Basically, what we wanted to do was ensure that when children are at risk of entering foster care, that kin get priority placement for children. We know that kids do better when they go to live with kin. And so that's why we wanted to put in code that we want kids to always have access to their kinship caregivers when possible. So that might mean calling grandparents first, calling aunts and uncles first, before they put them in a non-relative placement. The other thing it does, if there's a child who's 12 or older, they can actually say, I want to go live with grandma, whoever, and have a legal standing in court. And then the other thing that I had alluded to earlier is it allows fictive kin to be eligible for the financial assistance that I just spoke about. So prior to this legislation, if you were if you had a person who you were working with who had a very close relationship with the child, maybe they went to the same church and the child had regular contact with them and they had a really strong relationship, and that child was about to enter foster care, that person could now have legal standing through this Kin First legislation, get access to have the child come live with them, but also be able to access the financial assistance that I was talking about. Because again, sometimes your folks that you're working with have the biggest hearts in the world, but they have a lot of things on their plate that they're working with and trying to get through. And they want to take that child in, but they just cannot financially do it. So we're trying to remove those barriers for kids to have access to placement. The other thing is Senate Bill 1328. This is the state-funded kinship guardianship assistance program by Senator Monty Mason. This does something similar, except sometimes kinship caregivers actually want to be licensed foster families. When you're a licensed foster family, it accesses other resources like case management services. This just might be more beneficial for your family, depending on what's going on in your situation. This expands some of the eligibility. We had Kin Gap in Virginia through the federal government. It had a very, very narrow eligibility category. This expands it quite significantly and will continue to expand eligibility over the next several years to ensure, again, this is trying to address that financial piece for families. I also wanted to talk about advocacy opportunities. I think I heard one of you speaking about that earlier, about how you all, as this group, wants to be a little bit more involved in the advocacy efforts around caregiver needs. Well, of course, this is one aspect of it. So at Voices for Virginia's Children, we create a foster care unified legislative agenda every year. Kinship care has been on that agenda for the past 5 years in some capacity or another, looking at specific issues within kinship care and what caregivers need to help with children. And these are the member organizations that have signed on over the past several years. But we also have directly impacted individuals who serve on this network to inform us of what's going on, or who just want to be informed. We have a legislative advocacy day that we do every year. We do a foster care advocacy day, and usually we incorporate kinship care into that advocacy day as well. So if you are interested in becoming involved in that advocacy component, and this is specifically around kids and kinship care, my email address is right there, allison@vakids.org. I wouldn't try to call my office phone right now because I'm not there every day. It's much easier to get in contact with me via email. I check my voicemails every once in a while, but I'm like, oh no, that was from 2 weeks ago. But we do, you wouldn't be going in alone. We do advocacy trainings. We are very much a table that allows you to share what's going on in your world, and inform us of the needs of, a group like this and what legislatively needs to be done to support kinship caregivers. So that sums up the updates that I have for you all. And at this point, I wanted to stop and see if there were any specific questions that I could answer around kinship care, legislative updates, or anything in general that I could be helpful about. Just a reminder, sometimes to take yourself off of mute if you do have a question.
Well, Allison, one question I had is just a little bit more information about the determination for fictive kin. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yes, we tried to make it kind of vague in the code so that it could be interpreted. Basically, who's going to have final judgment on that is the local Department of Social Services worker. So you would have to make the case that you had the code reads an established relationship with the child over a sustained period of time. That could mean a lot of things. So it would be up to the local worker to do a visit, have some conversations, and see if they meet that criteria. We're not trying to make it super difficult for kinship caregivers. And in many cases, we are so desperately in need of foster families and kinship caregivers that we aren't trying to create an obstacle around like that language.
Thanks. That really, well, the vagueness is understandable now, so that's great, thanks.
No problem.
Okay. Anyone else? Questions, comments?
Allison, I just wanted to say thank you very much. I found that all really interesting, and I have never heard the term fictive kin. So learning. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me and sharing this information with your groups. I think sometimes we do a lot of legislative changes and it takes us sometimes just as long to get the information out there of what is really available. So this is really helpful on our end.
Good. Any other business? Allison, again, I say thank you, and I hope we can count on seeing you occasionally at our meetings. I'll just remind everyone that we do meet the third Thursday of every other month. So our next meeting will be in May, same time, same station. And so please mark your calendars now. That will be May 20th at 9:30. Always the third Thursday of generally the odd numbered months. So just a memory jog there. You can just go right through your calendar and paste it in. And hopefully we'll have a chance to see everybody and more.
Allison just put her email address in the chat for anybody who wants to contact her that way.
You're ahead of me, Donna.
I'm going to hop off. I actually have another presentation to do in a little bit. So
okay.
You all have a
Good luck.
great day.
And thank you again, Allison. Really
Yep.
good.
Bye.
This is Sharon. I just wanted to mention, I don't know if I've mentioned it before, effective July 1st, all of the licensing as it relates to childcare centers, family day homes, and subsidy programs is moving under the Department of Education. They will be overseeing the licensing as it relates to those programs. So we're not sure how it's going to change things around, but they will no longer be under DSS. All of that will now fall under the Department of Education.
Okay. Thanks, Sharon. And maybe have a side conversation about what the impetus for that was. Whether
I could say money, but
yeah, okay, all right.
And it came about when there was discussion. Apparently, there was a survey that indicated that a lot of kids were not prepared for school.
Yeah.
When school started, a lot of issues in terms of with preschool and those things, and what avenue could be used to get some of that into the daycare centers. And so that's when it basically came about that the Department of Education would start working with them. So they are going to, my understanding is, there'll be some curriculum and some pieces that need to be included depending upon the age groups that they're working with. But it had to do with a survey. They've actually been working on this project now. This will be 2 years. And so it's been 2 years in the making. And there are federal education dollars that will stream down with it. But a lot of it had to do with the readiness skills of the kids entering school and how they could, Virginia doesn't rank up there real high. And so how they could address that. And the decision was that the best way to do it would be come under the Department of Education. And so everyone's going to be moving. They'll still have a lot of the same regulations that we currently have in place, but there'll probably be additional regulations. And at this point, it's not going to apply to everything because they're taking religious exempt childcare centers, family day, as I said, family day homes, and then they'll be taking over the subsidy program. So we're not real sure what it's all going to look like. We just know that as of July 1st, everyone's moving to everyone that currently works with the children's programs is moving to the Department of Education.
Thanks for the heads up. All right, everybody, unless there's any other comments, I'm gonna move. Yes, Nick, one thing.
I hope everyone can attend, but if you can't, I record all the meetings and post them on YouTube, and the links to those go out with the flyer and the minutes, and I try to put them in every place I can put them in case people want to go back and see old meetings, or if you weren't able to attend this week, to spread it to a coworker if you thought it was really useful. So I try to log everything. Just a heads up. Trying to get better at it.
Well, it's something we've wanted to do for a long time, and I'm so glad you're on it. So what we may do is put together our greatest hits at some point and post that on the website as well. Thanks, everybody. Valen, welcome. Thank you for being here. Hope to see you as a regular attendee. And
Thank you.
And Kathy, thanks for being here, our fearless leader. And unless there's any other business or comments, I just thank you all for attending and look forward to seeing you in May.
All right. Have a good day, everyone.
Thanks, Nick, for all you do.
Thanks, Nick and Chris.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.